guys, I'm Danica and this is Couponing and Cooking with the Gabb. Hi guys, I'm Danica and this is Couponing and Cooking with the Gabbs. Now, for today, I am going to do a roast. Those and everything that I do in my cooking videos are couponed or deal shopped. So I'm going to do roast with corn on the cob, and then I'm going to have roasted potatoes, celery, and carrots. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, now for my meat, I do have one full roast. Now this one was deal shopped from my Kroger affiliate store, Sniffs, for $11.67, but it was actually a little bit less than that, about $9, because I did use a coupon for my meat. And then I also picked up from a Hispanic store here in the Southwest region, Mariana's. I did pick up, this is a chuck roll steak, and this was actually $4.50. So I actually already pre-tenderized the steak roll. I didn't pre-tenderize my roast, but it's okay. I'm not going to worry about it too much. And these were actually frozen just the way they are. So a lot of people ask, like, do you clean your meat? My answer is yes. I've always cleaned or rinsed my meat. Usually, instead of doing it this way, I'll do it like I did the chuck roll and pre-tenderize. But this time I didn't do my roast. I should have. But if you do want to take that option, you can just sprinkle some unseasoned tenderizer on your roast and then put it in the freezer. And when you're ready to cook it, it's already pre-done. Okay, so let me go ahead and move this to the side. And I'm going to rinse my roast in cold water. And then since I didn't pre-tenderize this, I'm going to sprinkle just a tad bit of tenderizer on it anyway. Just a bit, because whenever you use tenderizer, it does contain salt. So you don't want to over salt your food. And I got this chuck roll because I felt like the roast was a little small. And I have a family of 4, but I don't have little kids. I have teens, well, older teens. And they eat a lot. So I felt like it wasn't enough meat. So I just added on a little bit. Roast was a little bit pricey this past couple of weeks. So that's why I opted to get that chuck roll, which was a great price, $4.50. Okay, so I'm just going to put just a tad bit on this roast. I'm going to put it on both sides because it's rather thick. So just not a lot. And actually, I can just leave it on that side. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to season, which is my regular seasoning, my seasoned salt, black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder. And then I'm going to add a little cayenne pepper for spice. And a little crushed red pepper. And then I'll show you guys what else I'm going to do. I don't want it super duper spicy, so I'm not going to use a lot. If you use just a little bit of cayenne and a little bit of crushed red pepper, it won't overdo. Or you can opt to use both. You can opt to use neither. So they all depends on you and how much you want to use. I'll always tell you guys to season to your own personal taste. But that's pretty much my house seasoning for everything. It's like a basis to jump off of. And then I'll add other seasoning as well. I actually ran out of olive oil. So I am going to substitute with just a little bit of canola oil. Now actually I was supposed to spray this a little bit, just a bit, not a lot. Because the fat in the meat is going to produce its own juice. And it's also going to produce its own oil. So I don't want to overdo. So usually I'll add just a drizzle of olive oil, but circumstances being, I'm going to just use the canola oil. Now, this is beef stew seasoning, or you can use roast beef seasoning. And I'm not going to use all of it, not at this time. I'm going to cook it first. And the cook time on both of these, I'll say between 4 to 5 hours to make them tender. Okay, and that's pretty much it for my roast beef portion. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the vegetables so they can, my onion I'm going to put in here, but the rest of my vegetables I'm going to put in a separate casserole, only because these are, well, this is one of my shallow casseroles, and both meats will not fit in this one with the vegetables, and it'll increase my cook time. So I'm going to do them separate, but I'm going to season them about the same. So let's go ahead and get started on the vegetables. Okay, now for my vegetables, I'm going to go ahead and get started with my onion first because that's going to go with my roast, so I can go ahead and get that in the oven. So like I told you guys previously, when you're cutting your onion, cut it the way that you want to cut it. I don't cut my onion according to culinary standards. I cut it the way I was taught. I tried it the culinary way. Didn't work out too great. It takes a little bit of practice to do. So I just cut it the way I was taught. Okay, I went ahead and just peeled it and ran it under cold water for the smell and just to get the rest of the husk and everything off. I'm going to cut this in half. And then I'm just going to slice it. Make sure that you have a really good knife, and that way it's easier to slice, and you can get more even slices that way, and they cook evenly too.
And the fanciest things couldn't make me believe in us.
Okay, now that I have all my onion just sliced up, I'm going to go ahead and put it over my meat so I can go ahead and get it in the oven. And I'm just breaking up the slices and distributing them evenly over the meats. And then we're also going to add a little bit of water in here so that we can have some gravy when we're done. And what I'm going to do, since it's probably going to produce a good amount of fat, I'm going to drain majority of it off, and then I'm going to add the remaining beef stew seasoning that I have, so that I can make a gravy, and my gravy won't be just so, greasy. It'll prevent that by draining part of it off. And I did go ahead and cut up the entire onion. That you don't have to use the whole onion if you don't want to. My family likes onion, especially like cooked or grilled or something to that effect. So I went ahead and did the whole onion so everyone can get a good amount. Okay, now in addition to this, you can go ahead and also put bell pepper if you want. Sometimes I do that. I didn't get the bell pepper this time, so it's okay. We have enough vegetables as it is, so it'll work out. So to this, I'm going to just add a little bit of water. And the way when I add my water, I do it to the corners. I don't do it directly over my meat because I don't want to wash out my seasoning directly. So I do it like in the little crevices and corners. And I'm not doing a lot. It's about maybe a little bit less than half on here because, like I said, it's going to produce its own and it's going to end up like as an oil. And that part we're going to drain off. But we don't want to add so much water that it's going to, once it produces its own, it's going to overflow and we're going to have a big fat mess. So just a little bit less than half on your water just to get it started. Okay, now I'm going to just cover this in foil. We're done with this whole entire part. And make sure you do seal it in the best of your ability because you want that steam action to happen so that it can cook those onions down. It looks like a lot, but it's not because once it cooks down, they're going to flatten out pretty much. And then it's going to be enough for everyone. So just get it down as best as you can. And then we're going to put this on in the oven. I'm going to cook this on 400 for about 4.5 to 5 hours, something to that effect. So we'll come back and check on it after that. But let's go ahead and get the rest of our vegetables done so that they can get in the oven as well. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get started on the rest of our vegetables. Now, right here, I do have fresh carrots that were already pre-sliced, pre-cleaned. These were shaved, or whatever you want to call it, peeled. And then they were pre-diced into the like quarters, kind of, sort of, if you wanted to call it that. This is pre-done because I keep things like this in my freezer. Depends on what I'm cooking. If I'm cooking something and I want them like this, then I already have it already done. And then also I have another bag that is diced. So I can pick and choose whichever one. And these are fresh carrots. I get these from the Hispanic stores here. And they're usually about 6 pounds for $1. So that's an amazing price. So why would you not go ahead and pre-do some things to save yourself some steps? And then also these are fresh. I only do fresh or flash frozen. I do not do canned. Mainly it'll be for beans or something to that effect, or diced tomatoes if I do canned. Other than that, I do fresh and I put them like this. I do the work, or I'll do flash frozen. So I'm going to just add some of these fresh carrots, well, fresh frozen carrots to my casserole. Okay, next what I'm going to do is go ahead and get my corn going because that's going to be on top of the stove. So I have 2 ears. I only have 2 because my husband and my son, they do not eat corn on the cob like this. They only eat it, well, my son doesn't really eat it at all, but my husband only eats it like flash frozen like that. Not on the cob. So I only have 2, one for me, one for my daughter, and I'm going to still split these in half, and that's going to reduce my cooking time as well. So since these are fresh, they have to be shucked. So let me go ahead and get that done. Okay, now I have those already cleaned. I have them shucked. What that means is taking off the outer material, whatever you want to call it, of the corn, and then you pull the silk off. One technique I did see, and I do not have affiliation with these people at all, but I wish I did, was Iron Chef America. They took rubber bands and went up and down the corn cob, and that helped pull off some remaining silk that may be there, like this right here. And it worked out really, really well. And I don't know, I just haven't tried the technique yet, but that would be something that you guys might want to consider. So I'm going to take these, and I'm just going to cut them in half. Now, corn on the cob is not very easy to cut, so I just go down a bit and pop it in half, just like that. And then that's going to go directly in my pot. Okay, now I'm just going to add maybe a little bit, maybe half of whatever pot you're using. I'm going to add half water and just let this go ahead and boil. And then after a while, I'm probably going to add a little butter to the water and let that just go. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and get started on the celery. Now this was actually couponed. I got this from my Kroger affiliate store, Smith's. These were $1.99. Now that was a little bit pricey, but I did have a coupon for $2 off 7 on the fresh produce purchase. So that way I was able to reduce that price down just a bit. So what you're going to do is just break your stalks up until you get to like these middle ones. I usually don't really keep these because the little yellow parts, they don't taste as great. Although celery itself doesn't have much of a taste anyway, but it's really good when you're doing a roast. So I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'm going to wash these and then come back. Okay, now I do have my celery. This is the full stalk. Now I'm not going to use the entire thing. The rest I'm going to just dice up and put it in the freezer, but some of this I'm going to put in quarters. Now I'm going to chop off my tops and my bottoms. I do not use those parts. That's trash. And actually, make this a little bit quicker. I'm going to go ahead and slice this up in quarters, the same as the carrots we're going to do for the celery.
Dinners and rings and the fanciest things couldn't make me believe in us. I'm here for pleasure, so don't you put pressure on me to give into us. All I need is short-term devotion.
Okay, now we have all our celery that we're going to use cut up, washed, and it's ready to go. So that goes right over there with your carrots. The rest of this is going to the trash. And then I only have 3 stalks here, but that's fine. I can add to it later because sometimes I'll cut it up and start a bag. And then if I get more at a later date on a great price, I'll cut that up and pull out the previous bag from the freezer and just add it in. So I don't have multiple bags of the same thing. So I'm going to put this to the side. Now we're going to start our potatoes. Now I have a couple of previous potatoes here that I'm going to peel these, wash them, and dice them and put them into the casserole. So let me go ahead and get started peeling those, and I'll be right back with you guys. Okay, now I have my potatoes. They're peeled. Any bad spots, they're taking off. And then I did kind of sort of just cube them a little bit. So this right here is going to go into the casserole with the celery and the carrots. Okay, let's put that to the side. And what I'm going to do is just mix it up just a little bit so that it's just a mixture of all 3. Now, like I said, you don't have to put the onions in with the roast. You could put the onions in here as well if you wanted to. That's totally your decision. That's one of the strings off the celery. I don't like the strings, but yeah. Okay, so that's mixed around a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is pretty much the same seasoning as the roast. I'm going to spread this with just a little bit of canola oil, not a whole lot. Now, this is not going to produce its own fat, so I want to give it a little fat. Okay, oh, and just to show you guys the rest of the celery, this is what I do. So it's just a little small little Ziploc bag for now. And yes, my Ziploc bags are couponed. They were probably free. But this is the other 3 stalks. I diced them up because I also make homemade, like kind of Thanksgiving style dressing. So if I catch another sale on celery, I'll get that and add it to this bag and then probably end up using a bigger bag. But this is what I do. I just dice it up and freeze it. That's it. Okay, now back to our casserole. I'm going to go ahead and season this with seasoned salt, garlic powder, onion powder, and black pepper. And once again, you're going to season this to taste. And they actually look really, really pretty. Mixed around like that. It looks good already, and it's not even cooked yet. Okay, and then I'm going to take, I'm not going to use the whole thing, but some of the beef stew seasoning over the top. Now, you can use roast beef seasoning if that's what you have. For today, I had beef stew seasoning. It's pretty much kind of sort of tastes about the same. So it really doesn't make much difference. So I'm going to put the rest of that to the side. That was like another half of a half packet of seasoning. Now this is just 1 cup of water. I might not use the whole thing, but we're doing pretty much the same thing into the corner so that we do not take off our seasoning. Yeah, I'm going to use that whole cup of water. And we're going to do, once again, the steam thing. So I'm going to cover this with foil. And pop it right into the oven just like that. Now, if you don't want to use the spray like I just substituted for olive oil, the canola oil, because this is what I have, you can drizzle this with just olive oil if you wanted to. And once again, we're going to tuck this to make sure that we get some steam action going. And then we're going to pop this right in the oven next to our roast. And this cook time is going to be, of course, a little bit less than our roast. Our roast is 4 to 5 hours, depending on how big your roast is on 400. So this I would give maybe up to 2 hours because this is a full casserole of vegetables. So maybe up to 2 hours, and then just stick a fork in it to check the doneness. So we're going to go ahead and pop this in the oven, and then I'll be back with you guys to check on our roast. Okay, now our roast has been in about maybe 2.5 hours, so I just took it out for a second just to check and see how it was doing, see what our progress is. Okay, that looks really, really good. Okay, I'm going to stick a fork in there just to check the doneness. Okay, so actually, well, let me check on the roast part. Yep, it's coming along really well. So maybe just a couple of more hours for tenderness, but it's pretty much done at this point. If you guys can see that, it just pulls off on the end. But I want to make sure the thicker part of the roast does get like really, really tender, just like the end parts. And then right here, you can see the onion has cooked down. So what I'm actually going to do right now, you can also see the fat right here that was produced from the meat itself. What I'm going to do now is drain off some of this fat, add back, not all of it because I don't want to get rid of the taste. I want to just drain off some of it, add back some water, and then I'm going to use the remaining part of the beef stew seasoning that we had left from after the vegetables to this to kind of sort of make a gravy, and then put it back in and let that cook for the remaining 2 hours. So let's go ahead and check on our vegetables as well. Ouch. Watch the steam. Okay, so they look really, really good as well. They're just about done. So maybe another 25 to 30 minutes. If you guys can see this, they look really, really good. That's the potatoes. And then check those carrots, because fresh carrots, when they're cut in quarters like this, may take a little bit longer to cook. But my fork went straight through it, so it's just about done. And then let me check the celery. Yep. That's just about done as well. So we're going to pop both of these back into the oven and let them cook down. Now, like I said, for the veggies, maybe another 20 to 30 minutes or so, because everything is just about done. This is a pretty thick carrot, and I can pretty much tell from the resistance of the fork to the vegetable that it's just about done. And then another couple of hours because of the thickness of this roast right here on the right side. I want that to go ahead and finish getting tender. So we'll come back in just a moment and I'll show you guys the finished product. Okay, guys, this is going to go ahead and wrap this up. I did go ahead and let the vegetables go just another 30 minutes, and this is what they look like. They're nice and roasted. I did have the roast beef seasoning over the top of them, so they look really, really good. And then here is the roast itself, and that chuck roll steak is over here on this side. So it did get tender. I did pour off majority of that fat at first, that first juice that was in here, because it did contain a lot of fat. And then, like I said, don't pour it all off, because then you'll pour off a lot of your seasoning that is in that first juice. So I added back just to the same level that it was, the remainder of the beef stew seasoning to just 1 cup of water. And I poured that in here so that I could make a gravy. And you can see here it's the gravy right on the bottom. And it looks really, really good. So here's the chuck roll, super tender. And then here's all your little glazed kind of sort of onions on top. And then here is the thicker roast right here. And it's super tender as well. You can see that just pulling off. And then here's that one little piece I showed you before. So that looks really, really good as well. and you can see how tender that is. It's just coming apart because I did put that tenderizer over it at first, although it goes through a lot better if you tenderize it prior to freezing. But nonetheless, it still turned out really, really tender. That's why I gave it that extra cooking time. So altogether, it turned out really, really well. And then here's the corn. I did cut that off like maybe an hour or 45 minutes after cooking. And I did, you can see the butter right here on the side. I did add butter to it. So that turned out really well. And that is fresh corn on the cob. So we have our roast and our glazed onions with corn on the cob. And then we have our roasted vegetables. So all in all, it turned out really, really well. Hold on. Let me go ahead and see, you see the fork go straight through, and that's one of the thicker carrots right there. So that way you know it is done. Okay, guys, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this meal for today. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy cooking and couponing with love. Bye.